But the environmental situation in China doesn't look very good.
So we just arrived in Shantou. We're here to look at one of the big environmental issues in this town, and we're being told that the issue is extremely sensitive. Our driver was telling us that if we stay on the street for 20 minutes with the camera, the local police will arrest us. They'll turn us over to the security guards at the different sites who will then beat us up. We were headed to a city called Guiyu, where the main industry is dismantling old electronic equipment known as e-waste. On the way, we passed through another town, Nanyang, where we could already see piles of electronics on the side of the road. Every single one of these yards, you can see people dismantling computer parts.
这里停，可以停一下吗？
现在等一下给他看站这个管道。你等一下，他就会报警了。你这样，这个等一下出事。
There's a kid right here helping his father. They're burning some of these parts. The concern over e-waste revolves around the potential toxicity of certain electronic parts, which may contain lead, cadmium, mercury, and other hazardous materials. As you can see, all of this work is being done in people's homes or underneath their homes. They're not being done in any factory with any type of control, and that's the big issue because this stuff can be really toxic. What you also see are kids. There are kids playing around everywhere among all of this junk and toxic material. We'd been told that local residents ran these e-waste recycling businesses and that hundreds of thousands of poor migrants from other parts of China were working in towns like this one. We've just been driving for miles, and everywhere it says electronic waste. So, you know, that computer that you're on, that cell phone that you use, it could end up in this little village here in China. Each year, up to 50 million tons of e-waste is generated worldwide. Much of it comes from first world countries. It's then shipped off to developing nations such as Nigeria, India, and China to be recycled for their parts and heavy metals. And in recent years, China has itself become a big producer of e-waste. Our driver said that the locals were particularly suspicious because they didn't want media attention to interfere with their businesses. We decided to see how they'd react to us.
If they refuse to talk to you,
So this is, we just got out of the car for a second. Our driver was nervous, but he told us that we could bring this little camera out here and just walk down the road for a little bit, so we can finally maybe try to get some closer shots for you guys. You 工作签好不好？也可以。还可以。一天多少？100多嘛。100多。He earns about 100 kwai every day, which is about $12 US every day. 谢谢，再见。Our drivers probably should think it's me.
Let's get out of here. Here you go.
Okay. People are saying we have to get out now.
Okay.
These people.
Okay.
This is Professor Hua and her team of research students, and for the past 3 years, they've been going to Guiyu, known as the e-waste town, to study the effects of e-waste on humans. Professor Hua and her staff began their study despite the fact that local officials in Guiyu didn't want attention paid to the e-waste issue. So, Professor, in 2003, when you first started the study, what sort of health effects were you seeing in children due to the e-waste?
their blood is higher than the normal group.
When you have a high blood lead content, what does that do to your health? What are the effects on the body?
Yeah, the lead have many bad effects, especially for the nervous system. Maybe the children they don't want to learn, and also they have learning problem, or the IQ is decreased.
This cart in front of me is carrying different electronic parts. It's carrying it to another town where the parts will be burned so that the heavy metals can be extracted, and that's where things can get really toxic. Our driver waited until night was falling before driving us to a camp where several hundred migrant e-waste workers live. Most of the migrants had just finished work for the day. This is what they do. They live amongst their work. They wake up to these bags and they need to start disassembling all of these parts. And some of the parts are then sent over to be burned for the heavy metal that's inside them. Studies have been done on the children who live in this area, showing high levels of heavy metal poisoning. Traditionally, the Chinese government has been slow to acknowledge the vast amount of damage that's been done to the environment. But in recent years, China's media has expanded and become much more aggressive in exposing issues that the government has concealed, such as e-waste. In turn, the government has become more responsive. As Professor Hua and her team continued monitoring heavy metal poisoning in the children of Guiyu, they noticed improvements. So what they've also found in this research is that the lead content in the blood from children has gone down since 2005 quite a bit, but it's still higher than what is normal, about 25% higher. Why are you seeing the lead levels going down?
One important reason is that the local government makes an effort to change this situation. TV and the newspaper and the internet, they get news about Guiyu, so they also feel the pressure. The national government pushed them to do something.
Although the lives of millions have improved as a result of China's rapid modernization, growth has often been at the expense of the environment.
Just take a look around me. You can see that the landscape here has basically just been eviscerated all in the name of development and feeding China's economic engine. You know, sites like this exist everywhere in the world and are fundamental to the development of all nations. But when we talk about China, we're talking about a much different case just because the scale of the economic boom is unprecedented.
One company feeding the boom is Dabaoshan, a giant iron ore mine owned by the provincial government that ramped up operations in the late 90s to meet increased demand. When the ore is washed, the water comes away colored a deep red and bearing a mixture of heavy metals and toxins.
This looks like I'm on another planet. This is a giant reservoir that's meant to contain the wastewater that comes from the mines, but it's actually kind of pointless because just beyond here, you can see that I'm seeing right before my eyes, red water is continuing to stream down the hillsides.
The spill-off makes its way downstream into rivers in the surrounding area. 35 miles from the mine is the tiny village of Liangchao, where people say the pollution is ruining their water and their lives. We visited the village with Zhang Jingjing, a lawyer at the front of a new march toward environmental justice.
I think 30 years ago, this river must be a very clear and clean river.
This is the wastewater that's coming down.
No any treatment.
No treatment.
No treatment.
Standing here where the waters from the two rivers kind of merge and combine into one river, you can see pretty dramatically the water over here is severely discolored. What were the findings of the chemical contents of the water here?
Lead is very high. Lead in this river, and the cadmium is also high.
Zhang is gathering evidence for a lawsuit the villagers are filing against Dabaoshan.
里面我们这里好里面很多鱼哦，
原来是很多鱼。
原来是很多鱼哦，
原来喝那个水有没有什么味道？
味道有点酸了。
有点酸是吧？
你看我们这个修家啊，吸的那个抗水啊，都是腐烂的，真的都是腐烂的，这个是。
Just about 25 yards from the polluted waters, villagers are planting crops. The two main crops here are sugarcane and rice. And over the years, the waters have led to decreased crop yields. And this is one of the things the villagers are fighting for in their lawsuit. They want compensation because this is how they live, this is how they eat, and this is how they earn money.
What the villagers are able to grow, they have difficulty selling because everyone knows the crops are contaminated.
那个价钱不好了，很不好是吧？不好了，
因为他都知道
他们告那个有个那个抗嘛。
Because you can't sell your rice, you and your family have to eat the rice. Does that worry you?
担心也没办法，肯定担心的。
I sure I worry about him, but I have no choice. I have to eat this rice.
Decades of exposure to contaminated food and water have taken their toll.
我언니 나 그냥 제 라이더 그냥 제还这样，听个这样。
我们这里的人啊，都是那个案件很经常发生的，不管是老人的小孩都是很。
Over the past 15 years, over 75% of deaths in Liangchao have been due to cancer.
一共呢就31呢就有23个是癌症来的吧。
一个案件，一个案件，案件，案件，
你们随便选一个人去。
太多了。
Zhang is trying to do something unprecedented in China, win a lawsuit not only for crop losses, but also for health damages.
What is the challenge for you as a lawyer representing the villagers of Liangchao?
It's very hard to get evidence. It's very hard to file litigation in the court, and it's very hard for a judge to trial the case fairly.
Whether it's due to bribery or the desire to increase revenue from state-owned enterprises like Dabaoshan, local officials often fail to enforce China's environmental protection laws. As a result, an estimated 320 million Chinese drink contaminated water. But with the help of lawyers like Zhang, people are beginning to awaken to their rights and seek redress.
When you're going after big state enterprises and dealing with issues of the environment, the odds are pretty stacked against you. What keeps you going?
I'm an idealist, and I hope my work can really have some impact on our legal system and our environmental protection movement. As our economy develops, the awareness of rights is also a reason. So people try to use our legal system to protect themselves. So they try to sue the government agencies, sue the state-owned enterprise, and it's a good thing now.
你看
看到这个水，你会不会生气？
肯定生气了，流到我们那里黄黄的。不过没办法。
没办法，还是有办法，因为你现在有一个律师，你有没有信心？
有，就是相信他们啦，是不是？依靠他们了，没办法了，真的，看他们能不能帮我们解决了。
Typical morning here in Guangzhou. People are out doing their morning exercises, doing Tai Chi, dancing, and there's some old men over here who are getting ready to take a dip in this lovely Pearl River. Lots of people go to China looking for dirt, and it's not hard to find. Even the Chinese media have reported that more than 70% of China's lakes and rivers are polluted. But there are some things about China's environment that aren't what they seem. Do you go swimming in the water every day? Yes. Does it make you feel good? Maybe I can come join you tomorrow. Welcome. Has the water gotten dirtier over the years?
Oh, it's getting better and better.
It's getting better. 你好. What are you doing to your hair right now?
你而家洗緊頭，你而家做緊咩嚟㗎？
洗頭。
哦，
洗個頭。
You know, the water, is it clean?
啲水乾唔乾淨啊？你覺得？
應該比以前乾淨，但係咧，你話好乾淨梗係唔會啦。
Okay. The water looks very brown. Is it dirty?
这个水看得很肮脏，对吗？
还好，不会很脏。
What is the current state of affairs of the environment in China?
Well, the environmental situation in China doesn't look very good, and it's getting worse and worse. 1/4 of the people in China, they're drinking unsafe water. 1/3 of the people living in the urban cities, they are breathing unsafe air. So we're talking about a really serious problem, not just in terms of environment, we're also talking about a serious problem in terms of the safety and the health of the people living in this country.
We headed out about an hour outside of the city to check out some of the rivers that feed the region. The water is pitch black, the smell is really intense, and you can see all of this foam here. We're told that all of this is buildup from the chemicals that come from the factories around here. Are those fish jumping in the water?
Yes.
Does anyone eat that fish? There are about 1,000 factories just in this little area, but there are 10,000 factories in the surrounding area. So this is just a small example of what's going on in different parts of the country right now. China is on track to have the world's largest economy within the next few decades, in large part because it's become the manufacturing center of the world. What is responsible for the increase in environmental problems in China?
I would say the mindset of the local officials. For them, their major interest is to get as much investment for their region as possible. So they don't mind if the factory is spraying pollution to the area. They don't mind if they are destroying the river, destroying the soil. And I think there's also another major issue, which is the capacity for the central government to implement the law. China doesn't lack good environmental laws, but the problem is they're not being implemented at the local level.
So this right here is the dirty river that we saw a little bit earlier, and it's feeding into this larger river, which eventually feeds into the Pearl River, the largest river in southern China. It's kind of interesting because we outsiders come here and we kind of gasp at the Black River, but you know, the people here, they're fishing and swimming and, you know, having a nice Saturday afternoon. Is public opinion strong in terms of environmental issues?
The public opinions are getting stronger and stronger, and I would say you haven't seen this before in Chinese history. If the public opinions are really, really strong, I would tend to say, and the experiences have told us that the government will listen.
And as a result of public opinion, Greenpeace, which used to have to look into China from the outside, now is allowed to operate offices inside the country. How many people work here?
We have about like 20 to 30 people working here. Every year we have like more people coming to work for us. So we have been growing in size and also in terms of the campaigns we're doing. Particularly in the last 2 years, there's a huge leap in terms of like the awareness about the environmental problems that China is having inside China, but also causing to other parts of the world. And I think there's also a lot of change in terms of the media. Environment is like one of the major topics that Chinese media are talking about these days.
Environmental field trip in Beijing. The people who are on this trip are from about 40 different environmental NGOs, non-governmental organizations. And right here, we stopped at this point to look at this canal where the urban wastewater flows into this canal. The Chinese government tends to cover up certain issues, including environmental issues. So it's pretty amazing that we have all of these groups that are represented, and we're just taking a tour of all of the different environmental issues that are going on in the city. And we went on this tour where there were, dozens of representatives from different NGOs.
Indeed, you're seeing a big change in terms of the attitude of the central government, allowing NGOs to work on environmental issues.
So this is where 5 different rivers meet up, and you can see all of the sludge and waste that is accumulating over here. Are you hopeful about China and the environment?
We are here in a very exciting time when China is actually changing, not just economically, but also socially, in the media, in people's mindset. People in the government are also changing. So this is exciting, and this gives you the hope. I'm pessimistic when I think about the scale of the problem.
Well, the government hasn't been able to stop the factories from polluting, but they have made some improvements, and over on this side you can actually see a clean water canal that's been constructed. Right here we're sort of standing at a crossroads. On the left of me you have the environmental problems and the problem of factories and pollution, and on the right you can see some effort to try to clean it up.
See more Vanguard Wednesdays at 10 p.m. on Current or online at current.com/Vanguard.